he said, do not think like Silicon Valley. Do not think about the same kinds of problems that Silicon Valley started with addressed. Think about problems that are unique to Africa and then pivot around those. And these will be your big startup opportunities. I think there's a great future, but you should not try to create the same Facebook, because that's not going to come out of Africa. The great startups that are going to come out of Africa will be for agriculture, will be for healthcare, and many other things that we will not be able to do in the US.
I couldn't agree more. And just to clarify, I do aspire to doctorship, not yet. So just the introduction to everyone. But I'm with Visa, and we see this, and I know Visa teams come up on stage and talk about some of the work that we're doing around data sciences, machine learning, and I can tell you, across Africa, the challenges are unique and very exciting. And it's not the same as what we're seeing in the rest of the world. And I've lived in San Francisco and moved from there, from the Silicon Valley companies who are doing stuff around AI and machine learning. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. Alternative credit. There are no credit scoring agencies that have spent 5 years tracking people's data and deciding who's credit worthy or not. We have to capture the alternative data. We have to look at it differently, and we've got to make decisions. And then when you even do the credit score, you say, well, that person has income so they can pay back. Or do you start to look at behavioral data? Data like, what time does that person wake up in the morning? If they wake up at 4 in the morning to go trading and make money and do all of that stuff, maybe they can better pay back. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that's just, Africa will have to learn it and apply it. No one else will, and you can't find that sort of stuff out by looking at data from the United States. And so that's just a huge opportunity for us here. I mean, and it's, we look at things around fraud and risk. For Visa, this is extremely important because, we process 65,000 transactions per second across 200 countries, 17,000 banks. It's a lot of data that we see. But the data here is so unique, and, how do you start to score around fraud and risk and determine that a transaction, is risky and you should decline it or approve it or assign a score to it? Again, this is just insight that's going to come from Africa, and this is the sort of work that I believe that, folks here in this room are just best positioned to bring insights and solutions to. So we're seeing it across the board. I'm not even going to go into loyalty and offers. What exactly is the right offer that you should target to an African consumer, and how should you reward them for their behavior, give them discounts and all of that stuff. What's their lifestyle and what are their needs? Again, huge opportunities there. So I think as connectivity increases, storage becomes cheap, more bandwidth becomes available, more consumers are connected, and they share digital data. How can we begin to harness that, bring more insights, and improve the quality of life for many on the continent? And only Africans in this room can do it, and do it best, because you're here and you know what digital needs are.
It's a great answer. Karim, do you have any thoughts on competing with overseas tech companies, given that your AI startup started right here on the continent?
I agree with what has been said. I mean, as discussed a bit earlier, I think there are unique problems that, in particular, this audience is very well positioned to not only discover but solve. And those are the niches and opportunities of tomorrow. And what's fantastic about those problems also is that there's going to be relatively little competition. You might be, the first to solve them, and you could grow from there. Because those are maybe niche, specific problems. Large companies are focused on solving bigger problems, or are just don't have, let's say, the depth of knowledge you have about your own ecosystem to figure out that, hey, an opportunity is there. So I believe it's a unique time, and that you could get going very quickly, and importantly, change the ecosystem, and, for example, help save lives by fighting malaria. This was an IBM competition going on this week. So you really get a chance to make a difference, and from a startup perspective, the opportunities are countless. It's just a matter of you digging to find those.
Can I add one more thing to answer? So Peter Thiel wrote this really interesting book, or it was written for him, called 0 to 1. And in this book, he asked the question, he says, if you want to think about technology in the future, you should think about one thing that you think is true for the future that most people would disagree with you about. And people have asked me that question before, and I've asked myself, and I've picked two things that I'll share with you. One is that I think the automotive industry is going to look very, very different in the future with the advent of self-driving cars. The second one that I think is going to look very different is education. I think education is extremely expensive. There's a traditional model where people go to university for 3 years or 4 years, finish university with a crazy amount of debt. Now, if you think of where Africa is placed and the unique opportunity that you actually have, as compared to Europe, as compared to the US, Europe has institutions of education that have been around for hundreds of years, and they're not going to change. The same for the US in some way. Africa doesn't quite have that, so Africa has a real opportunity to disrupt the way education is done and come up with new models of tertiary education and prove that it could work. Startup exists because of this idea of disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation essentially means, if you look at the history of Kodak and the advent of digital cameras, if you look at Garmin and TomTom, and suddenly mobile phones are around. So big companies are really afraid of, or really care about this idea of disruptive ideas. For education, my bet would be on Africa, and my bet would be that some of you will be able to find that trigger point and do this really disruptive model for tertiary education that would be cheap. This is Stuart's list. Cheap, accessible, with a massive demand, a great solution, and something that all of you really care about. I would actually invest in that.
Actually, to the point of like, what do you know that other people don't know, I think it is great. And particularly, I'll tell you what we at Study and at Deep Learning in Indaba know that maybe other people don't know. We believe that African talent can compete and win against the world in machine learning. Like, Africa has the opportunity when it comes to AI and machine learning, the fourth industrial revolution, to really take the place it deserves. And we're trying to make it happen in practice. And this is, for many, many of us here, what drives us. So that's the thing we know that maybe perhaps others in the world don't know. But African talent is fantastic. It can compete and collaborate with the best in the world. And it's all about making it happen. So that's a bit like what you said.
I think that's a good segue into another topic, which is, if we're talking about developing great teams, that being like fundamental for developing a great startup, and we're talking about African talent, like how would you suggest that startups go about collaborating with academic institutions on the continent and in the rest of the world?
I can take that. And so, I think collaboration is key. You have to partner. And especially if you want to go to market fast with what you have. We do this all the time. And, just being a global company and realizing that we're coming to Africa, that we work in certain markets, we identify those partnerships and collaborate. And collaboration will give you a number of access to a number of things. One is technology capability, so where you find a partner that can actually give you access to APIs that you don't have to build yourself. You can go to market fast. You can consume those APIs and deliver on your solutions and be able to scale to additional geographies as well. And so when you think about educational institutions, it's a student base, it's a test base. It's where you can actually test out some of your solutions. That's one. Two, it's where you can consume some of the good work that's been done around research and find ways to commercialize those. I did my MBA at Berkeley, and it was always interesting to go from the business school. It always felt uncomfortable when you're in Berkeley and you're an MBA business student, and you feel like this the capitalist island in the middle of, just Berkeley, and so we'd go out to the engineering school, we'd go out to the School of Public Policy, and engage all of those students, especially the engineering school, and identify some of the ideas that they were working on, and partner with them, and bring some of those ideas to business plan competitions as business students. We can create the business plans, we can model the revenue projections that obviously are going to be game changing, and we bring it to market. We drive value proposition, we engage venture capitalists, and we try to raise money, we try to pitch it. And especially when you're a student, you have access. People take your calls. You send an email out, they want to meet with you. It's just really exciting. It's the best time for you to be doing that stuff, and those are the best group of people to be working with because they really do have access. So I'd say, take the time to sort of, identify and try to just get in there and figure out what smart people are thinking and help commercialize this stuff. And as you do that, so it's collaboration on two sides. One is at the academic institutions with students that are thinking about great research. You're playing the middle person, bringing that in, consuming that, and trying to create good consumer value propositions and commercial solutions out of it, and then collaborating with partners and corporates like, how do you say Visa? I mean, we're reaching out. That's why we're here today. Because we want to partner with you. We have a developer platform with APIs exposed that we want you to come to sandbox, test on. We can play in the sandbox, consume those APIs, test out your ideas, and see if it is, if it gives traction. And we want to do more with you if that's the case. And there are many more partners like that. It's Google, it's Facebook, it's they're all here. And so you want to collaborate on both sides. It's the ideation side with academic institutions, and then it's the go-to-market and execution side with corporate partners. And that, I think, is really the path to success.
I think academic institutions are great because that's where many ideas are birthed. But when collaborating with an academic institution, the one thing that I think you should be very careful of when it comes to starting a company is who owns the idea. An interesting data point that I could give is in Cambridge, where I live at the moment, that the town has seen tremendous growth in the startup sector. And there's a story that goes like this. It's an accident of history. Can I tell a story? Yes, it'll be very short. In the 1800s, it said, a professor from the university was asked to build a bridge for a town. And so he built this bridge, and the bridge collapsed. And the town sued the university, and they were successful in their lawsuit. And at that point, the university said, if you as a professor design anything, build a bridge, this is your problem. You don't have anything to do with it. Which actually really liberated everyone to start companies, to do things without any interference of the university. Now, as an investor, if I was to invest in a startup company and you are involved in a project where the university owns most of the IP, I would be very, very reluctant to invest in a startup company. So Karim and Stuart spoke about having the right partners. If you collaborate, think about whether the university would be the right partner, especially when it comes to the ownership of IP. Because that is going to really boost you in the long run, or it's really going to hurt you in the long run if you don't do your homework well.
I think also, the question of collaboration with universities is we need a new model in Africa to do that. So, for example, let's see what happens in the US, let's say in Silicon Valley. You have, great high, students coming out, graduating from Stanford, the best and brightest companies in the world come and hire them. It's a system which is already in place and functioning in a distributed way. The reality of many educational institutions in Africa versus startups is that maybe there is less awareness about recent, sometimes extremely recent developments in machine learning that we would like. So the concept that, hey, you're just going to go to university and hire people who are qualified and can hit the job immediately, to my sense, is not the right approach. The right approach is probably more something where companies really collaborate with institutions to bring them maybe the additional awareness about what's happening in the field of AI, for example, and help together bring to the students what's missing in terms of like very relevant, education in terms of machine learning. So that's what we've been involved in doing, for example, at InstaDeep in multiple countries, and we see it really as win-win. So compared to, let's say, US model, you have to engage more with universities to make sure that talent very early on has really access to fantastic opportunities to learn about what's relevant. The universities are already doing something fantastic, which is bringing in young students with all the background when it comes to probability, linear algebra, that you need to get going in machine learning. But you need that extra additional, say, excitement of doing things that are interesting in machine learning, both from a theoretical and practical perspective. I also believe this is really important because one of the challenges we have as Africans is the brain drain. If we don't have that close integration between companies here that are really innovating in the ecosystem, what you're going to see is that the elite of Africa is going to just leave and sometimes never come back. And for me, this is a huge lost opportunity for the continent, but also for those graduates that could have ended up creating incredible companies in Africa. So by having that tight-knit model, maybe the hope is that we get more qualified candidates hitting the job market, also more awareness that in many ways the opportunities are here at home and not necessarily abroad. I like to think that if you are ambitious, you want to go out and study or work in the US or Europe, but if you are very ambitious, you want to be here and innovate disruptive business models with great partners like we discussed, like what Visa is doing, what Google is doing and others, but make it happen here. I believe the opportunity is here if you are truly ambitious and if you truly understand what is possible.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Fully agree.
Okay. It looked like you had something to say. I think like one of the comments now is kind of like sparked another thought, which is that if you look at the poster sessions here, there's a lot of like deep technical expertise right here in Africa, and we're talking about linear algebra and probability theory and statistics, and there is this desire for students here to contribute significantly to academia and develop cutting-edge like fundamental research in machine learning. How would you advise startups to balance the desire of these smart people that they're hiring to do this fundamental research with this other goal of actually building a company and making money and business development? How would you advise that they kind of strike a balance between those two sometimes not completely aligned objectives?
If you are running a startup and you want to publish, you want to do state-of-the-art research, every person in your company will have one thing that really causes them to excel. When I was my second startup, there was one team member who worked until midnight every night on startup ideas, because if something great came out of it, he had the option to publish that. I've seen the same person work in another company where he didn't have the option to publish his work at the end of the day. It wasn't even a guarantee to publish, and he would leave the office at 5 p.m. So we got 6 hours more very, very, very passionate work out of one of our employees, only because we managed to tap into the one thing that he cares about. And the one thing he cared about was to be at the academic forefront. So then the challenge becomes, for you as someone who leads a startup or runs a team, is to align. You need to somehow find an alignment between what you do as a startup and then these academic ideals. And like Karim said, you've got to burn your bridges. So you can't align your startup with these academic outputs. You have to take whatever academic ideas you want to do and completely reshift them towards your startup. So if you're a computer vision guy and suddenly you have to do natural language processing, forget about computer vision because your startup's doing something else. Second thing about that is that all the really hard problems exist in startups. So if you publish in academic conferences, maybe 90% accuracy is good enough. In the real world, that's not good enough. You're going to meet your customers and they're going to complain because they have very high expectations of AI. So you can't just go the 90% to get your paper into ISMO. They actually have to go the 100%. And the 90% takes maybe 6 months and you're done with the paper. That last 10%, that is blood, sweat and tears, and that's years of work.
Okay, maybe I'll share a true story that happened to us last year. We had found a sort of a breakthrough in deep reinforcement learning around combinatorial optimization. And then, as Stuart said, came the key question: do we publish this or not? Very interesting debate within the team. But at the end of the day, we decided to publish. And part of the reason was at the time that we thought, you know what, if you really want to build an amazing team, you need to have that ability to publish. And even though you're a startup, and by definition as a startup, you don't have the resources of tech giants, and you're not paid to do research, you're paid to build, by investors to build a great startup and make it successful, we were like, in the grand scheme of things, you know what, let's publish and see what happens. And to our very big surprise, and we never expected this, that paper got picked up by David Silver and Nando de Freitas during the last Indaba, and suddenly, hey, we're propulsed in front of some of the very best AI researchers in the world, and they're interested into what we do. Incredible opportunity that gave us a lot of credibility and opened up also for many other researchers, as we said, from university to come and say, knock on our door and say, hey, let's collaborate. So it was a huge success from that point of view. But maybe even more surprising, we actually got clients knocking on our door saying, hey, we actually read your paper. When we think we have a great use case for us to work together, could you come and help us build platform? So incredibly, the fact that we published that paper actually got us business on top of scientific recognition. So I think it really depends on the type of startups you're in. But if you are, say, an AI machine learning focused startup, you will have to publish, and it's not you will have to publish, you will be excited to publish, you'll work late, as Ulrich was saying, to publish. That has to be a driving factor. That doesn't mean that you're going to publish everything you do. We're patenting technology also at InstaDeep, but the vast majority of what we do is open, and it promotes also a culture of openness in the ecosystem, which will be replicated by others. And this is not a zero-sum game. It's a positive-sum game. So you have to, move beyond that. And if you do, you will discover that actually, hey, this was the best thing you could have done.
Can I just add to that? So, and I like the point that you made there, which is it depends on the kind of startup you are. And I've heard one other point, which is credibility. Credibility and reputation is extremely important. And so, I know, because at startups who are very focused on PR and marketing and just want to get out there and make noise, but they can't deliver, they can't execute. That people catch on to that very quickly. And so, because at the initial stage, your credibility as a startup is the credibility of the founder or the founding members. It just doesn't just ruin the company's reputation, it ruins your reputation as well. It's a small community of, potential strategic partners who may want to do something with you, and also venture investors who could potentially invest in you. And the moment you've lost credibility and, you just have a bad reputation in the market, it spreads very quickly. And that just hurts future prospects. And so I would say, heads down, discover something, create great value proposition, go to market fast. The point is not to sit on it until it's perfect, but be ready to deliver and to back up what you're doing. Just that credibility is very, very important in the early days, and that's what that will be your goodwill going forward as you engage more partners and more clients. And people are ready to work with you. They know you're a startup. They know you don't have the resources. They know you still need to perfect your solution. They know it needs to be improved. Trust me, there's no illusion on that. But what they don't want is to feel that you're being deceptive, you know. And so I think that's key. We should keep that in mind.
I want to tell a story about credibility from my first startup. So I wasn't the founder, but we failed after 2 years. And it was a computer vision startup. We did visual search long before the days of neural networks. And we worked with stock photo libraries. And one of the photo distributors that we worked with is basically the international paparazzi network. So you start up with desperate. And this is a network of people who, of companies who have offices in Milan, in London, in New York, in Hollywood. And the paparazzi network is that someone would sit, take loads of pictures, and this has to be processed very quickly so that it could be in the tabloids the next day. We went to the office of these of this company, and we were given lots of images to classify. And the image was of Paris Hilton walking off, climbing out of an airplane in New York airport wearing a particular kind of boot. And our sales guy said, don't worry, we can spot Paris Hilton in a crowd, we could recognize the boots with computer vision that she's wearing. And these guys were so excited, there's a light around the mouth. And so he comes back. I was actually on the, I was with him with these lines. So we're like, we can't do this, guys. And this happened a few times, and we lost credibility, we overpromised, we underdelivered. We knew that we couldn't recognize the Paris Hilton, the boots that Paris Hilton was wearing as she's climbing out of the airplane. And once you've lost credibility, there's no way that you can backtrack and get a client back. The clients that stuck were the ones that we were very humble to, that we never overpromised, that we explained the complexity of the solution, and they got on board. But the Paris Hilton was lost because of this credibility thing.
That's great. I think I'm going to ask one hard question, and then maybe see if we have some questions from the audience. So guys, think about your questions. I'm giving you an opportunity here. So I was challenged yesterday. I was having a conversation with somebody at the Indaba, and as it generally goes, they challenge your thinking to a fundamental level. And basically they said, well, what if you do have an idea, you have a product that's something, and it is something that people want, right? And it is valuable, and it is urgent. And it kind of like hits all of those startup criteria which I listed, but they can't afford it. And I think that this is a challenge that we have in Africa, where sometimes like some of the issues are so fundamental that it is tricky for startups with a profit motive to solve. And I was wondering what your advice would be to people who are working in non-profit organizations, government agencies, academia, with regards to like what we're talking about here today. Go ahead.
Sounds like you've been encountered a challenge like that. And this is the startup not being able to afford the solution, or
The clients.
the client not being able to afford the startup.
Maybe I'll just give hopefully a beginning of an answer. First, we haven't faced this problem directly, but I would say, if you're doing something that the community can't afford, maybe what you can do is sell it for an expensive price abroad into developed markets, and use some of the proceeds to help the community bring some net benefit. And I actually believe that for successful startups in Africa, you need to also work with international customers, because it's also a matter of credibility. If you can ship product to Silicon Valley, to Europe, or to Asia, it gives you a certain credibility which is going to be useful even back home when you're dealing, let's say, with corporates back home who are not clear about your credibility. So maybe beginning of answer is, if it's too expensive, sell it in the rich world, and then make something available for free that moves the needle back home. So
I learned one thing through through a Harvard Business School summary. So this is your 1 minute MBA, and it says you should never ask whether there's a gap in the market. You should ask whether there's a market in the gap. In this case, there's clearly a gap in the market for whatever these startups or these companies, these people want to do. But there's no market in the gap, and because no one's going to buy it. So, unfortunately, the world runs on many economic factors. People put money into a startup because they invest, they want money out at the end. And maybe the time is not right for the solution, or you should just think of a completely different solution. When I think about startup ideas, I always think about these two things. Is there a gap in the market? And then secondly, is there a market in the gap that you've identified? And there's often a gap in the market, but if you look at the gap, there's no market in there.
I think that's the answer. Product market fit is just really important. And as you run into these ideas or you identify them, whether it was accidental or intentional, it's just going to be very important to identify who the target market is and whether that product is a fit for that market. You may have to go up market, obviously find more corporate buyers who can actually afford it, and figure out how you subsidize others who cannot afford it. This is where you have to get creative with the business model and actually innovate around that too. You've got a lot of funds, venture funds. I mean, again, remember it's an ecosystem, right? I mean, are there venture funds that are more focused on, the non-profits and driving this double bottom line? Are there corporates that do that, are more focused on that kind of thing? Or, is this something that, the World Bank or the UN would find interesting? I mean, then you really have to expand your scope if you believe that the solution is that compelling for that market segment that cannot afford it. And then here's the other point too, is where you partner with them to find funding. So if it's a non-profit that can afford the product, then how do you tell the story around it? How much of a difference can it make, for a population or for the community? And the non-profit should be telling that story with you so that you can jointly actually go out and fundraise appropriately. I mean, this is where it starts to get exciting, frankly. You've just created a product that requires you to create a new market, new business model, find new types of partners, and just create a new commercial construct. So, you're entrepreneurs, what you love doing, and you're just doing more of it within the same product experience. So yeah, I mean this is it. It's product market fit, but even within that, there's a lot more that you can do and sort of expand into.
That was a great answer. Much better than the one I gave. Much better. Are there questions from the audience? Is there a mic that we can run around?
Okay. So, I've actually been waiting for this. So, I have two questions. One question is, now, after MVP, the mobile products, how long should you wait to evaluate the value and the growth and your growth hypothesis? Because now you have a very small team and you've already had an idea and now you've developed your MVP. So how long should you wait for you to evaluate that product to see if it's right to continue with or to make some adjustments? Another question is, now I only know from this Karim and Ulrich, you both have a PhD degree and stuff. Now, what's your advice?
For the record, I don't have a PhD, just a master's.
Okay, so maybe I will not ask this. Do you think having an advanced degree is good for as a startup founder to get a good startup? Do you think having an advanced degree would help you, and how does it help? Yeah.
Actually, okay. I'm not sure what the minimal viable product was. Your question was: is it about how much money you need, or when do you need to? How do you know how to push ahead? I can say a few things about that. I think people are always in love with their own ideas, and a very difficult thing in a startup's journey is to decide when to drop a product, because you've sunk a lot of cost into developing it, and there has to be some maturity to know when to pull the plug. And it takes a crazy amount of maturity to do that. I don't think anyone can do that really well. With regards to whether one should do a PhD, having a PhD or coming from an academic background actually hampers you in running a successful startup, because you need such a wide set of skills. You need to be business savvy. You need to be some sort of people person. You need to be able to talk to people. You need to not just read academic papers. You need to read a number of startup papers. You need to read maybe at least one copy of the Harvard Business Review to figure out how this business thing works. You need to be legally savvy. You need to recruit a team. So you really need to be an all-rounder and maybe not an expert of anything. And that would be a great person. Yeah, so don't let the lack of a PhD dissuade you, rather let that encourage you.
I think from my point of view, and I'm not a PhD, so I'm biased on this question, but I think that, you know, the role of a PhD is to have credibility and credentials, but you can get those credentials in other ways. And in particular, we are at a time where things are moving extremely fast in the world of machine learning. We believe the opportunity in Africa, when it comes to startups and innovation, is now. So if you are planning to start a PhD now and literally be away from, let's say, startup world for 4 years, think about it as a huge opportunity cost. That was the situation I was in when I was in the US. I had the opportunity to, do a PhD, whether in Stanford or, on Columbia University. But that was the time it takes to get the diploma. Maybe I can move faster and I can learn it myself and somehow get going. And in hindsight, it turned out to be the good decision. Doesn't mean it's the good decision in every case, but if you are really, really intense about startups and making a difference to the ecosystem from an entrepreneurial point of view, then definitely, you have to consider that opportunity cost. It's no surprise that the biggest, innovators and entrepreneurs of the world, from Mark Zuckerberg to Elon Musk, all dropped out of their PhD to go direct and create companies, because it's a sense of timing. If you think the timing is now, then focus on entrepreneurship. If you think the timing is later, then absolutely, you can develop your skills, your research through a PhD. So the timing is key.
People who have PhDs, it's the last thing for this question. People who have PhDs make two mistakes in startups. The first one is that they only hire people like themselves. So if you've got a computer vision PhD, you probably hire more people from the computer vision community. That's the worst mistake you can make. So you want the most diverse team that you can assemble for a startup. Second one is that if you have a research background, you think that you'll improve a product by increasing it, getting 5 more percentage on points in your error classification rate. That does not necessarily translate to a better product or money in the bank. And I've seen researchers find it very, very hard to make that switch and spend months getting 2 extra percentage points on their neural network, with making no impact on the product and having wasted 3 months of salary on a very, very, very small budget.
Thank you very much for this session. Very insightful. This question goes to all the 4 of you, including the MC. You both worked with startups or built startups. I would like to know, what is the worst mistake you ever did when you're considering a co-founder, and how was the process like, and how did you go about getting past that?
Okay, maybe I'll start. First, I'm happy with my co-founder, so, happy days. But it happened to me in the past that for a period of 6 months I tried to, launch a project with somebody, and we tried to think about many ways, etc. And in the end, we got lost in details and we didn't do anything. So I think the worst mistake you can do when it comes to selecting a co-founder is it has to be someone who is a nice person. And how to say this? Like, avoid the marketing style. Some people, you say, okay, maybe we don't think the same, but this person is so great at marketing and I'm a builder, etc. And make sure you really deeply get along. It's actually in one of the slides we listed. This is exactly what they tell you. It's like, you know, you need, maybe the most important thing is you pick up somebody with everything we said before during the presentation, but somebody who has the mentality that nice people finish first and not nice people finish last. I found that criteria to be extremely useful because it conditions many conversations you're gonna have. It conditions the way you work as a collaborative team. It conditions titles even, you know. It's like if you're fighting for CEO title, for example, that's a problem. So let me give you an example. When InstaDeep started, I was not the CEO of the company. At the time, we started just because we felt good, and my co-founder Zora was already in the process of launching the project, and I've joined her as co-founder. But she was the CEO. And at the time, we had no idea that we were going to do AI stuff. It just felt good, and we had worked together, so as I said before, we did it. Incredibly, and this is to tell you the kind of people you want to work with, came a time when AI became our main product, our main focus. So it made sense for me, because I had the background and expertise, to be the CEO of the company. And incredibly, she said, look, Karim, we're going into AI, I'm up for it, so you're the CEO. That's the question you should ask when you're picking up a co-founder. Would you be able, 2 years, you know, in the project start, to be able to take a decision like this with no hard feelings on each side? You know, that's the kind of things that makes the difference, you know, when the times can be difficult on other. So make sure you pick up somebody for whom collaboration is a natural feature, and that being nice to people makes you finish first, because that gives you a good chance.
Yeah, I would just add that, and I agree with all of those points. I'd add, and it also goes to hiring in general as well. Just make sure you get someone or people that are really accountable, you know, and you bring them on and they're accountable for their side of the work. I mean, the stuff that they need to deliver on, they are switched on, they're connected, and they have full ownership of it. That's important. It's also important to, you're not going to be able to teach certain things. There are things that you can coach people on, you can sort of teach them and all of that, but personality issues, you just can't. And so just make sure that you can get along. And one other one that's really important is, what's their work ethic like? You know, and I find this in teams. If you just have people that are not motivated, don't have the right work ethics, it just doesn't match with yours, that is going to be a problem. And that's stuff you can't teach. I mean, if just someone just doesn't believe in going the extra mile, you know, when it's the most important time to go the extra mile, it's just, you know, you're gonna have problems. So those are some of the things that I believe you do have to spend a little bit of time understanding what sort of personality this person has, how that will be a fit. Are they accountable? Can they take full ownership for the stuff that they need to cover? And do they just have the right work ethics and the right personality for going the extra mile? The biggest asset that you're going to have as a startup is great perseverance and resilience. And I mean, look, it's not for everyone. That's just all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with Otto, and yeah, it's the extra mile. And actually, when you pick up the co-founder, ideally it needs to be someone who you've been into a difficult situation, or both of you went the extra mile repeatedly. If that happens, and didn't take no for an answer, for example. If that happens, that's probably a very good candidate for co-founder.
Yeah, I think I think that one of the most important things, so the biggest mistake I made was that I worked in a startup before where my previous two business partners and I didn't have the same definition of success. And the reality is that they were much further along in their careers, and they'd already had a lot of accolades and success kind of thrown their way, and I'm still young and extremely ambitious. And I think that ultimately in the beginning of the company wasn't an issue, but as we progressed and the growth wasn't quite there where I would like it to be, but it was where they would like it to have been, that created a lot of friction, and that was quite challenging, like personally, especially considering that these are two people that I have a lot of respect for. So I think that just making sure that you have the same definition of success and like that you are aiming at the same goal is probably the single most important thing, in addition to like all of these attributes and characteristics that a great co-founder has.
I never founded a company, always joined soon after just founded. So can I just share with you 4 mistakes? So the first startup I was in was not a big success. After 2 years, it ceased. So these are mistakes from post-mortem. Can I share them with you? Okay, so 4 mistakes that I think made a company fail, which is very useful. So if you're a startup, you're going to have a very small budget, but don't be afraid to spend money on things that are not your core expertise. So in the first startup, we wanted to save money, and so we ran our own Linux server to be our email server. So it was a startup that did image recognition, and so photographers would send us emails with big images attached, and the server would drop it, and we would never know that the client sent us an email. And then the client would send us an email again a few days later and say, hey, why did you not reply? And then we said, but we never received email. And this became embarrassing. And it could have been $50, I don't know, $100, I don't know how much per month to get a very good email client. And we thought we could save $100 by doing it in-house because we're all computer experts running our own Linux box. That is a very costly mistake, to make an extremely costly mistake for repeatability. The second one is that when you start a company, you're going to have a business plan. That plan may or may not succeed, and at some points you have to revisit it. In the dying days of this company, we had more products than we had people in the company because we were getting desperate and we never had time to stop and to really replan the future. So make sure you have these markers to replan. The third one is that something that Otto mentioned, and that's about ownership for everyone. Everyone in the company should have access to the same passwords, the same source control. It's very easy to say now on stage, but in practice, you're probably not going to do it unless you remind someone. We were at a trade show and we were running demos live. This was the biggest photography trade show in Britain. It happened to be the hottest day of the year, and all the servers died in the computer cluster that we ran things, so we had to reboot it. You know what? The one guy that had the password wasn't around. And we had to run everything for this trade show on our laptops. Super simple things like that. Number of clients we lost just because we didn't openly share everything in the company, so that anyone could reboot and restart the server, and everyone had access to the passwords. The last one is you will probably have investors who are going to be on your side because they are interested in seeing the company succeed. Listen to them when they have advice. Try and get good investors and good partners. My 4th failure point for us was that there was a critical point in the company when we had to really rethink the business plan, and the investors came with some ideas, and no one in the company took it on board, and that essentially made us miss our second round of funding and caused the decline of the company. So let me just quickly summarize. Don't be afraid to spend $100 on something that you really need. Ownership for everyone. Share passwords, share code in the same repository. Have milestone markers where you revisit your plans. If things aren't going according to plan, rethink and don't become frantic. And I can't remember the last one.
We'll be continuing this session tomorrow in Startups and Innovation session 2. Thanks. If we could get a...
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So see you tomorrow. We're only done the half, so there's a lot of exciting stuff.